when I took that first leap of faith, I went from corporate America, making a six-figure job or making six figures within my job, really quote unquote comfortable, but very internally uncomfortable. I knew I was called to something greater, something more. Entrepreneurship wasn't sexy then. I took all the risk, but wasn't really considering the responsibilities that I had in my life because I just assumed I was going to win. Sometimes that can work for you. In my case, it didn't. In my case, I landed flat on my face. I ended up filing for bankruptcy. I took out a bunch of money on credit cards. I was living off those credit cards. And I was trying to fund my entrepreneurial dream with credit and passion. Hey everyone, my name is Rodell Razor. I'm the CEO and co-founder of X Factor Capital, and I'm going to be showing you guys the inside of our new podcast, the Underestimated Podcast. We're going to be interviewing founders from all over the country. We're going to be telling their stories about the obstacles they've had to overcome, the things they've had to do to build their businesses, whether it be through fundraising, acquiring customers, technology, all these different challenges that you have as a founder, and how as an entrepreneur you have to overcome those challenges, and how as an underestimated entrepreneur they have unique challenges to them, how they go through that process. We're going to tell their stories. We're going to highlight some of their businesses. Hopefully you guys can see some of their great products, some of their great services, and for those of you that are interested in entrepreneurship, this podcast is for you because it's going to inspire you to go beyond that threshold of where you want to quit, to go through that wall, and these stories are absolutely incredible. So you guys stay tuned. Come along. Hello and welcome. This is the Underestimated Podcast. My name is Rodell Razor. I'm the CEO and co-founder of X Factor Capital. The Underestimated Podcast is here to share stories of entrepreneurs from all over the country. And today, I am happy to introduce my co-founder, my business partner, my best friend, the godfather to my children, to one of my children, and I'm just so grateful for Jeremiah to be joining us. Jeremiah Captain from Oakland, California. Introduce yourself, Jeremiah. Welcome. Finally, I got you on here, the Underestimated Podcast.
Yeah, man, I flew it on a bird yesterday, man. It feels good to be in Phoenix. It's been some months now. I've been out here, since March or April? Last time I was here.
Yep, March.
It feels good. It's always like a second home. Love you, love your family, love being here, and excited to be on this podcast. So I'm Jeremiah Captain, originally from Oakland, California. Really grew up in that area, chasing a professional football dream. The whole song and dance of that was the only view that I thought that I could make it out of the hood and be able to take care of my family. And when that door got slammed in my face because I wasn't good enough, the whole joke is I was drafted by the Seahawks to watch them practice. Pretty much was knocking on the door at the mini camp, and then they let me in. And I found myself working in corporate America for about 6 years in the construction space, working as a project manager, doing outside sales, helping the companies really work with architects and engineers and developing systems from a lighting aspect. But I just really saw that wasn't for me. I wanted to really test my wings in the entrepreneur space because I always wanted to be able to kind of create and find my own way. So I got in business development for a nutritional supplement company and worked with that company for about 7 years. Our team and our strategy really helped that company grow at a high rate. And that's where me and you met, in that
Yep.
journey. And we saw the world the same way. I like to say we're like-minded, like-grounded, and like-valued. And that really allowed for us to really put together a partnership and a team to go out and really help companies grow and scale as a consultant. And then, to kind of fast forward to where we're at now and how we're building X Factor, when the social injustice was unraveled, and it really galvanized people to move towards, really helping the reverse the immiseration of the Black culture. We want to be a part of that solution as well, and that's where X Factor was birthed. And been on the journey ever since with you, really just coming out here to help find, fund, and fuel entrepreneurs. And now we're coming in, rocking the Underestimated Podcast, really just to add value out to the marketplace. And I'm excited to be here and excited to be on the journey.
I appreciate it. Well, this is my co-host. Like I said, lots of commas in between our relationship. And so grateful that you're here, man. And so what I'm actually going to do, I'm going to pivot. I'm going to throw a curveball because we've been in now 3, 4, maybe 5 business ventures together. And so you talked a little bit about your experience as an entrepreneur. I want to hear from you. What is your biggest success or one of your biggest successes? Because it's hard to just pick one. It's like your kids, right? Well, what's one of your biggest successes and one of your biggest failures?
Oh, man. Biggest successes. That is hard to choose from. I would say the one that's going to jump out my head that's in front was just able just to get out of the rock bottom space and build a company where I stopped, literally eating feeding myself from food to mouth and really just develop enough, excess of income to really take my mom on a trip. It's the first thing that pops in my mind. So in the business that I was building, I really started with really nothing, really from a bootstrapping standpoint, not having a car, not having a place to live at. Nobody would invest in me. And I had to just start with just grit and tenacity and sales to really develop a cushion for me to go out there and grow that income up. And when I was able to finally take my mom on a trip, took her on a cruise down to Costa Rica, and we went through the Panama Canal. It's basically an elevator for boats. That was super impactful for me. So I would say that's a success for me, not so much as in the business. Yeah, building that was all good. But, when it's all said and done, it's about the relationships, you forge with those you care about the most. And spending that time with my mom was a big success for me. And my biggest failure, so many failures. I like to say
lumps, losses, and lessons.
Exactly. Failures are part of life. It's part of growth, and they're actually beautiful failures. I think putting all my eggs in one basket. At one time I was doubling down in this one company that I was a part of, and I just thought this was going to just go to the moon and this was going to take care of everything, and not really diversifying, not so much to be distracted, but diversifying in other ailments. So when that ship kind of started to float, didn't have a big enough flight boat, but I had one prepared and I was able to make it. So my biggest failure, I would say, which is putting all my eggs in one basket in my company where I was doing business development.
Yeah, no, I think that's a good lesson, because one of the things that I've just learned over and over again, some of them we've learned together, is, entrepreneurs, we get so like there is no plan B. And, the kind of hustle culture, we say, hey, no plan B, no plan B. It's a distraction from plan A, which can be true, but that doesn't mean that the money that you make with plan A, especially if you start to get excess cash flow, you shouldn't have it working for you so that you do have a cushion. And so I think the no plan B, it can unfairly create an environment where you don't allow yourself to fail and you keep pushing past a point when really you should close things up and make a pivot.
Yeah.
And so
there's a time you need to quit. There's a book called The Dip. Where you got to get in the dip and you know when to quit. There's some things you got to quit. And people say, don't be a quitter, never quit. And it's like, nah, there's probably some things you probably need to quit.
Yeah, you can quit smoking.
You quit smoking. You probably need to quit playing video games if it's not serving you. If you're not going to be a world champion video gamist or create video games, it's probably something you should quit. Yeah. Or on a business, when you're pushing forward, sometimes life is testing to see the validation of if you really want it. So you need to lean into it a little bit more. Yeah. But sometimes life is telling you, like, no, man, this is it. Yeah. It's time to pivot, right? And get off that ship. So yeah, I think that's really good.
Pivot to Win, a book plug.
Jordan Babineau.
Yeah. Pivot to Win. That's what his book's all about. Is about how you make those pivots in life from one season of life to the next, or one business to the next. And I think the startup world talks a lot about pivots, talks a lot about one thing going down, the next thing going up, and all those different things. But sometimes hustle culture will say never quit. So I appreciate you sharing that. I love talked about, we always talk about losses, because losses are the lessons. It's the lumps we take. It's the scars. We speak to the scar, not the open wound. And so it's always a pleasure to hear. And it's your first time on the show, so I mean, as a co-host, everybody got to know your biggest win and your biggest ails. So with that being said, the Underestimated podcast is hosted by X Factor Capital. That's Jeremiah and I's venture capital firm, where we invest in underestimated entrepreneurs. And so we started this podcast as a way to get entrepreneurs a way to share their story in a meaningful way, in an organized way, where they got to get more exposure to potential corporate sponsors and partnerships, investors, and of course, customers. And so we created this podcast with the idea that we were going to create a platform that would help entrepreneurs who maybe come from non-traditional backgrounds, whatever that means, help them get more exposure to their brand, their business, their mission. And so now we're halfway through season 1, and it's been a great ride. So that's a little bit about the podcast, a little bit about X Factor Capital and how we got started in 2020. as Jeremiah mentioned, we were running a consulting firm. We were doing consulting for small businesses, medium-sized businesses. We were doing like workshops, and then we were also doing keynote speaking, large event keynote speaking. And in 2020, when that changed, that was June of 2020, we made a phone call. George Floyd had just been murdered in late May. Jeremiah and I did a phone call together. We said, hey, how do we be more of a contributor to the community that we care about? And so we didn't know exactly what that looked like, but we knew that one of those avenues was going to be through business. We're not politicians. We're not pastors. We're not police officers. We don't write policy. Like, those are not the things that we do. We're business people. And so we knew that we wanted to do something that contributed in the ways that we most understood and where we had the most relationships. So we made a few phone calls. One of those was to a mentor, and I'll let Jeremiah speak to that phone call. And the other one was to an angel investor who I had worked with in the past, we had success together in the past. We told him we wanted to come work for him. He was a top venture capitalist on the West Coast, invested in some really big companies and had a lot of success. And I said, can we come work for you because we want to learn venture capital? And he politely said no. He said that you guys can do this on your own, and I can just show you the way. And so he's kind of sponsored us into this industry. We're very grateful for him. So over the last year and a half, Jeremiah and I have set out to learn venture capital from the outside in. We're kicking down doors, we're breaking ceilings, whatever you want to call it. But we are entrepreneurs learning to be venture capitalists in this space. We've already deployed our first investment, and we have our next one in the pipeline, which we're very excited about to drop very soon. And so at the time of this recording, at least. So that's a little bit about our firm and who we are. And how we got to, not only this podcast, but how we got to X Factor Capital and our mission. And our goal is to find, fund, and fuel entrepreneurs. And so finding is to, research, create platforms to where they are attracted, fund them with minimally dilutive and strategic capital, and then fuel them with advisors, connections, resources, and partnerships. And so that's what we've been doing. And we're very proud of what the future holds for us. The other phone call, Jeremiah, talk about the other phone call we made and what came out of what we've been able to do there.
Yeah, so we definitely want to make a difference in the capitalistic space because we're capitalists at heart. Like you said, we're not politicians, we're not pastors, we're not 100% activists, but we activate ourselves in different areas. So we focused on coming to the capital channel, to the door, with our angel investor that he spoke about earlier. But we also want to make a difference in the more charitable space, in the foundation space of where can we contribute and serve, where we could serve with our hands, our feet, and obviously our time, talent, and resources there. So I reached out to my mentor who helped me really transition out of high school to college into my professional career, Mr. Bruce Lang, dear friend of mine, pretty much like a godfather to me, and showed me the world a lot more than what I thought I was supposed to see in my community of Oakland. So he runs a $100 million a year lighting company, and he's in the construction space, and he really wanted to gang up together with us in X Factor to have us go find and recruit the talent, meaning the students in the Seattle area. We specifically want to start in the African-American community and really introduce them to the industry of construction on the white collar side, not just, swinging the hammer or driving the crane, but there's so many different job opportunities and potentially career opportunities, and also starting your own business from so many different distribution channels, right? The whole aggregation of the construction space, from architects to engineers to structural engineers to mechanical engineers to electrical contractors, sales, lighting designers. There's a whole gamut in there. And what he did on his part, he went and gathered up the top companies in the Seattle area, got their executives to commit their time, their talent, and their treasures, meaning investing their money. And within 2 months, we raised $70,000. We recruited 15 students from the Seattle area, and they went through a curriculum over the past year, and they were able to learn and job shadow behind these different industries. And when this program ended, we had 12 complete. We gave out $15,000 in scholarships to seniors that were going off to college. The students that were going into the trades, we gave them $2,000 to help pay for their books, their boots, and all that they need. And each student got a $500 stipend, but they had to go to a financial literacy course to receive that. And the students that wanted to have an opportunity internship got a paid internship over the summer. And some of these students were making $25 an hour in the summertime.
Come on.
I know adults not making $24 an hour and certain things. So it was a beautiful thing. And we're in our second year right now. We have students going through the program. They're actually meeting today where they're learning about interviewing today, because that's one thing as well as we're going to talk about. Our whole mission is to close the wealth gap, and we want to do that through entrepreneurship, and we're doing it through investing in the tech space and companies that have the chance to go boom and scale. But there's nothing wrong with being an entrepreneur, an employee as well, being an entrepreneur. So having a really good paying job so that you can have money to invest and potentially be an angel investor to invest in some of these companies that we're investing in as well too. So we're big advocates of closing the wealth gaps through multiple resources, because we need all hands on deck to close this gap that was created basically starting over 200 years ago when we first came to this country.
Yeah, no, that's good. So for those of you taking notes, so X Factor Capital started Underestimated Podcast. That's what you guys are listening to right now. And then also we're founding members and sit on the board of Construct Diversity, which is our nonprofit arm, which is a 501c3. You guys can find all of that information on our website at xfactor.capital. So let's go into a little bit about entrepreneurship and founders. I think one of the things that I've seen over the last 18 months of meeting different venture capitalists, investors, angel investors, venture capitalists, private equity companies, they're all looking for like this thing. And they're looking for this twinkle in the eye or this certain resume or this certain pedigree. Some people call it founder pedigree or criteria. And one thing that we've noticed is it's an X factor, something you can't always can't go to school for. It's something that you just kind of innately have, or the mission that you're on, it brings it out of you. And so there's people who are not naturally entrepreneurs, but they have such a mission and an idea to that's going to be so groundbreaking that it brings the entrepreneur up out of them. And so the founder pedigree, one of the things that you and I have learned, and I'll let you talk to it more, but I think we both can, is I just Googled like qualities VCs look for in founders, right? And this is something that we've just noticed in our own fundraising efforts and having different conversations, pitches, raising our own money, was to think clearly and communicate succinctly. And as natural sales guys, succinct communication is not our it's not our natural, right? We like to elaborate. And so speak to that a little bit around thinking clearly and communicate succinctly.
Well, you only have so much time when you're working with potentially or enrolling an investor or enrolling a new team member into your vision, because time is money. People are moving on. They're taking meetings all day. So if you have a 15-minute block or a 30-minute block and there's 3 or 4 people on the call, the more you spend on expanding on your backstory, your life story, your mission in the world, then you don't leave a lot of time for them to get to the brass tacks or the meat of what you're really wanting to talk about. So you want to be bold, you want to be brief, and you want to be gone. And one of our advisors, name is Satbir. He was one of the first employees at Amazon, graduate of MIT, just super intelligent, from the country of India and backgrounds where his roots are. But he always tells us, be crisp, be more crisp. As we're writing our bios, as we're telling our story, he's always telling us to really tighten it up. And at first, it was kind of like, what does he mean by that? And we really got it as we start to be on more calls ourselves, as we're raising our fund, as we're working with our sponsors. It's really helped, perfect our messaging out there. And John as well, too, our anchor, investor and our senior advisor, is always talking about, be bold and be brief in your dialogue. But get to the point,
Yep.
And I can say, me and you, when we do calls with John, It is the fastest 5 to 7 minutes ever, but we cover everything we need. We get right to the point. And if we miss something else, we gotta wait to the next 5-minute meeting to come in there.
He is the master. he has mastered the 7-minute meeting.
Yeah, literally right to the point.
Like right to the point. And we catch up. Yeah. We catch up a little bit, like how's life? Here's a little bit of Seahawk talk, kids, and then we were straight to the point. We are done in 7 minutes. He's mastered the 7 minutes.
So if anyone works for a founder or you're just working a job, everyone hates meetings that drag on, right? The 30-minute meeting that could have been an email, right? The hour meeting that could have been an email. So you could really appreciate someone that can just really just pack all the information in a short period of time. So when you respond back to questions, something that I've even learned, and we're even doing this podcast because we're just shooting from the hip and we're having a good time in here. But you want to respond in 1 to 2 sentences. That's what I found when you're doing in a pitch competition, or if you're talking to an investor and they're asking you questions. If you can respond 1 to 2, 3 sentences at most, that's going to be clear in those, right? Don't just say, "Yep, that's it," right? But be really clear and crisp and articulate in that space. You're going to be able to really raise some good funding. You have a better shot.
Yeah, no, I've one of the things we've watched a lot of is pitches, and a lot of pitch competitions, but just as an investor, especially if you guys are, that are watching this, you either want venture capital money, you want angel investor money, you want to start to go on that fundraising adventure, as I'll call it. First of all, that's a part-time job in itself. So if you're a solo founder or a co-founder, fundraising and all the assets you're going to need, the digital assets that you're going to need to fundraise, it's a part-time job. So as on top of being an operator, I'll first say that. Next, if you're pitching, one thing that we saw, I forgot who mentioned it, and I would love to give them credit, but they said if you have 30 minutes, remember they told us this, if you have 30 minutes to present your company, use 10 minutes in your pitch and background, and then leave 20 minutes open for questions. Because whatever you don't cover, if they're interested in that 10 minutes, whatever you don't cover, they'll make sure they ask you. You want to make sure you don't leave out anything vital. So you want to get all the vital pieces down to a 10-minute pitch, which at first for us, like when we were getting on calls, our pitch was 45 minutes, right? Because we were giving all the backstory, all the things, right? And so we've just learned, and I've really learned a bit of backstory so that they get to know a little bit about who we are. And then it's like, all right, what's the meat of why we're on the call so they can find out if we're a good fit for them and they're a good fit for us. And that's hard to do. It really is a skill. But I think of this style of communication like we think of the iPhone. The iPhone is one of the most simple tools. Like literally my 2-year-old knows how to navigate my iPhone, right? But there's so much time that went in to make it that simple. And I think that's what founders can be doing with their communication is how do you get that deck? How do you get your communication, your pitch down to where it can be that simple to where you can get it out in 10 minutes? Background, meat and potatoes, and then open up for questions. Because questions is where you're going to build more relationship and be able to go a little bit deeper. So anything else you want to share on that before we move on to the next topic?
Nah, that's good, man. We got to be brief.
Let's be brief. Let's communicate succinctly and let's move on.
Let's chew on our own medicine on that one, man.
Awesome. All right. So the next one is balance risk with responsibility. I'll start on this one.
Go ahead.
Because I have taken some big risk and landed hard. Early in my entrepreneurial journey, and Jeremiah knows this story, but early in my journey, I saw the vision before I attained the skills. And because I had a high risk threshold, I was willing to roll the dice and bet on myself. I think it's over glorified how people say, "Oh, always bet on yourself." Like they don't tell you that sometimes when you bet, you lose. Like it's like Vegas, right? Yeah, sometimes you bet, you lose, and eventually you can win when you bet on yourself. And I think that's the end of the quote that never gets added, right? It's like always bet on yourself because when you lose, eventually you still have a chance to win. It's not like Vegas where you just run out of money. Yeah. And so when I took that first leap of faith, I went from corporate America, making a 6-figure job or making 6 figures within my job, really quote unquote comfortable, but very internally uncomfortable. I knew I was called to something greater, something more. Entrepreneurship wasn't sexy then. And so I took all the risk but wasn't really considering the responsibilities that I had in my life because I just assumed I was going to win. And sometimes that can work for you. In my case, it didn't. In my case, I've landed flat on my face. I ended up filing for bankruptcy. I took out a bunch of money on credit cards. I was living off those credit cards. And I was trying to fund my entrepreneurial dream with credit and passion without a lot of the skills of the trade of entrepreneurship. Like there's still skills here that are very, very, very critical. Sales being one of those skills, time management being another one of those skills, networking, team building, right? We'll talk about all these different skills that you can have. But I had all the threshold ready for risk, but I didn't have the skills and I didn't balance the responsibility of like, oh, I got rent, car payment, like groceries. Like I was fully capable of being a very effective employee. I went to college, I got a degree, I got another degree, I went and got jobs, and I did really good in that structure because everything was very predictable. When you step outside of that structure, which is what I wanted and what I felt like I was ready for, but when I stepped outside that structure, I wasn't really ready. I wasn't as ready as I thought I was. And so I didn't drown, luckily. I had good people around me, and when I went through those financial hardships, I was able to recover. I was able to go back and get a job and get myself back up on my feet. But I love risks. Now I'm a father. I'm a husband. I got people. Now I got different types of responsibilities. Now we have a team. We have people that are on payroll. Right? Like so, there's different things in different phases of your risk versus responsibility journey. But most entrepreneurs who are really good, they understand how to balance that.
Yeah, that's really good. I mean, I think there's a space of responsibility builds trust. When, if someone's going to give you $200,000 or $1 million, they're going to raise $5 million, they're trusting you to be responsible with it. And we've seen some founders be not that responsible with it, right?
Absolutely.
Their risk versus responsibility tolerance is all skewed, right? But there's an old saying, you got to risk it to get the biscuit, right? So you got to know how far you got to go to take that risk to get to where you want to be. But being optimistic, but not foolish, right? Really understanding that, yes, you can create just about anything that you want in time with the right amount of time and effort and energy going in the right direction. You can get to where you want to be, but understanding there's a great responsibility that comes, with whatever you choose to do. So now that's really good that you broke down just how your journey, combined with that understanding of how to, balance that risk versus responsibility.
Yeah, that's my biggest loss. I haven't shared it on the show yet. That was definitely my biggest loss. I had to take that L, but because I took that L, I would never do it that way again. Yeah. There's things I understand as you mature. I think I was 25 when I did that. I matured because you can mature really fast. I think it was Will when we were talking to him. He was like, "Hey, how much did you learn in this phase, And I was like, 1 year of full-time entrepreneurship, you can learn about 10 years as an employee because you just you learn so much, right? Even in, putting together a podcast, right? The management, the project management skills that it requires there. But what's one of your criteria when we're interviewing founders? What's something that you like to see, whether you have gotten a chance to know them or something that you're really looking for?
Because we are new into this space ourselves, right? Yep. There's some basic traits that you look for in a winner, but I always want someone who knows what they're doing, that's an expert in what they're an expert in, but be willing to share when they're not an expert in. And being willing to learn. Humble to a certain degree, the things they need to be humbled in, but at the end of the day, I want them to know what they do know. I want them to be an expert in their space.
Subject
matter expert, and I'm not afraid of them being overly confident there because they know what they know that they know there, right? But in the areas where they lack, be willing to ask for help and don't be a know-it-all in all areas because no one can be that, but someone open to be a learn-it-all of learning of, things that they don't know or bringing in the talent and the team around them if they have the resources to do that. So that's one thing that just jumps in my mind right now because it's, interviewing some founders, they act like they have it all put together and they think it's going to be easier than what it is. And that's just, once again, just being optimistic, but being foolish.
A bit naive. Yeah.
Right?
No, you've one of the things I was thinking of was like you're a subject matter expert, but you're willing to be coached and like opening that door. And I think that's something that's understated, right? Is like you're open. You're open.
Yeah, you're open.
But you're one of my favorite qualities is a level of stubbornness, right? Because like I shouldn't be able to just push you over on your vision. Like I shouldn't be able to like, hey, that's a bad idea. And you'd be like, oh, okay, I'll change it. Yeah. Like you should have some backbone. You should have a level of stubbornness. Like, no, this is my thesis. This is right. And I'm going to prove it, right? There's a level of that you do need, but there's a give and take. And I think good entrepreneurs do err on the side of being more stubborn than they are necessarily open-minded or coachable. Because if they were super open-minded and coachable, they would probably be more looking for leadership rather than trying to be the leader. Most leaders are a bit stubborn where they're like, I know the way and I'm going to show you the way. And sometimes, again, you roll the dice and you fail, right? So I think a level of stubbornness is healthy.
Yeah, it's a balance. I think you got to have a balance with the game. It's like, yes and no.
Yep.
Right. And when is the yes, when is the no? And it all depends on who that founder is and how good they really are. Yep. And then we'll all see. Yep. Right. Like the Elon Musk of the world, some people say like he's so difficult to deal with, the Jeff Bezos, but look at what that difficult to deal with created. Look what that was able to produce. Now, some of the people that may try to have that same type of, stubbornness or eagerness, if they don't have the ability to produce that, it just looks terrible. Right. But you have to be willing to fail. You have to be willing to look
same
terrible.
With the risk threshold.
The risk threshold, and it's the mistakes that you make, whatever. I call them mistakes, right? Because you got to make them along the journey. But it just depends.
Well, that's good. Yeah. What?
So
mistakes?
Yeah, they're mistakes. There's mistakes that you must make to be great.
That's good.
The bar,
That's
right?
good.
So we flow to, check mic 1, 2, 1, 3.
I ain't heard that one yet. All right.
Yeah, let's say
we ain't on Drink Champs, man.
Hey! Who's drinking water here?
Oh, man, that was good. I think one of my favorite qualities, and I think it's become my favorite, and I think it'll stay my favorite, is like when you can just tell someone hustles. Yeah. Like I think that's just like when you just know they're a hustler. They're an early riser, stay up late, hit the road, not afraid to get into meetings, not afraid to do the dirty work. Like when you just know that about somebody, some people are too, they've reached an ivory tower somewhere in their life and they're not willing to get down and dirty and clean the toilets. Not saying that that's productive in the sense of building a startup, but like when you just know someone's willing to do what it takes to win, that whatever it takes mentality, that is when you can sense it. Real recognize real. Like sometimes you can just sense that someone got it. Yeah. They got that dog in them, and that's probably my favorite quality. And again, it's the X factor. You can't really there's no resume builder for that. There's no class you can take. Like it's just in you. Yeah. And I watched my mama do it. Like she worked 3 full jobs and she never ran a startup. But I bet if she was ever given the opportunity, she would have out hustled everyone. Yeah. And there was someone that I forgot who I gotta remember. Before I drop quotes, I gotta remember who says them. But anyway,
you probably got it from somebody else.
I'm gonna take credit for this one. But there was someone that actually told us this. They said the Black entrepreneur ecosystem has so much potential because what white people are afraid of is when street smarts gets book smarts and gets access, right? And so there's a level of street smarts that when you bring to the boardroom, when you bring to business, there's a level that when you just have academics on your side, you don't have, you didn't build the sharp elbows. You don't have any scars from having to fight and scratch and claw. That you just have a competitive advantage of those when you do have that. So I think hustle's my favorite.
Yeah.
Not over hustle though, not fake hustle, not Instagram hustle.
Yeah, not real grits.
Like real, when our photographer Fox, he's behind the scenes. Y'all can't see him. When we were traveling, we were like, it was 7, 8 in the morning.
It was 6.
It was like 6, and we were rubbing sleep out of our eyes. Like, man, what's he doing? And he was up editing photos, editing videos. Like he was working. It was on Sunday morning. We were waking up wanting to watch the games and all that. And he was grinding. Like, and that was one of those moments that it's like he's a grinder. we gonna rock with him. So he didn't know I was gonna give him that shout out.
in the building. Fox in the building.
Fox, hey!
But yeah, like you said, it's like one of those things where you can get straight A's and flunk life. Right? Book starts and street smarts, when you bring them together, there's a beautiful combination that can happen in there. So there's a space of talking about being underestimated, but there's a blessing in sometimes being underestimated, because it gives you that chip on the shoulder. It's where that adversity becomes your asset. So we're starting to see these underestimated founders get opportunity to get in the game, and when they show up in the game, they take over. It's like when Tom Brady got his chance to go in the game, right? He was underestimated at the time. You look at him being underestimated for years. They thought he ran a 5.4 40 and 199 pick in the draft, right, and all that. And then he got his time to shine. He took off, and haven't looked back. That's what we're going to start to see, with these black founders that haven't had the opportunity as some other people had for the last 200 years in this country. And we're going to see some big things blow up. We're already seeing it right now.
What industry are you most excited about right now? What industry has the most upside to you? Nah, maybe not most. Won't be so definitive.
Yeah.
What's the industry that you're just excited about right now?
I mean, you can't be walking down the street and not hear about crypto. I mean, everyone, you can hate it, you can love it, doesn't matter. You're not going to be above it, because it's just here. It's been here. They're going to figure it out where it's going to evolve into something. And I believe that is a space, along with other technologies, that allows underrepresented groups to have access to an opportunity to build some wealth. We like to kind of call it, it's the way for the non-accredited investor that doesn't come with a lot of background that can learn this, and it can be a version of them investing like in a tech play, to get a tech startup, because to invest in certain tech companies and tech opportunities and funds, you have to be an accredited investor. Yep. And if you're not an accredited investor where you have a net worth over $1 million and up, without your house being included in that, then you might not be able to have some of these huge upsides unless you have a friend that's building something. And typically, a lot of times in the black community, we're not in those networks to invest in potentially $5,000 in the next Uber or Facebook as some, friends and family rounds. So I believe the crypto market, blockchains, things that have true value or working to build something that's going to be tangible to be used in the future, has an opportunity for people to make some good income. But there's so many other industries. I know you're excited about some as well.
Yeah, no, I like you said, the blockchain is the new buzzword. Yeah. And I'll group NFTs into that, into the blockchain and into the crypto market. That's something that's it's still, I think, under investigated. I think there's still so much upside that most people know Bitcoin and they've maybe heard NFTs, but there's just so much there. There's so much opportunity there for entrepreneurs and just investors. The retail investor. So I think one of the industries that I'm most excited about right now is logistics, supply chain. Anyone who's out building, we have a huge supply chain problem in the world, but especially in America. It's the holiday season at the time of this recording, and there is some serious issues around delivery, supply chain. People
I was trying to buy a car. I couldn't buy a car. I wanted to buy a new car.
Literally wanted to buy a car.
I was trying to give my money away, and they were like, "No, walk out."
We can't take your money here. Your money's no good here.
You need to leave. Yeah,
no, that was.
You have to edit that one out, man. But nah, it's an inside joke.
That's literally what happened. He was trying to buy a car. He's calling me because I have a background in the car business, and I'm like, "What's going on, man? Like, why can't you go buy the car you want?" He wanted a hybrid. I mean, it was a Camry at the time, right?
Camry,
He wanted a hybrid Camry. He was like, "Hey, man, I want the fuel economy. I'm not here all the time. I travel lots. I want something that's good on fuel." And just couldn't buy it. No one would take your money because there's supply chain issues.
Some cars were a month out. Some cars were 3 months out. Man. Literally. And it was just
90 days.
Yeah, 90 days for me to get a new car because I was going to lease. I was going to lease it, get the tax write-off, understand all that. Then I started considering going used. I finally was able to find something that I wanted in another market.
But I think that's someone who's going to solve some of that supply chain. Some of that will be, doing more domestic business. But Yeah, I think anything around the supply chain, last mile delivery, that is something that obviously we're very excited about right now. But I think those problems are very prevalent, and I think a startup is going to solve them. I don't think the big dogs are going to solve some of these problems because they're too big to slow down and solve some of these problems. These things will create efficiencies in their business model, but to invest the resources, that's going to be a startup. I think it's going to be a founder. I think it's going to be someone who solves these problems. And then the other one that I think we both can speak to is the renewable energies, anything green, global warming, anything that's around renewable energy or different options for fuel, electric. I think that's definitely, I don't even think that's a future. I think that's a right now. I think that's turning.
We have to speed that up. I mean, the jury's still out on what actually is going to solve global warming, and is the climate issue really something where we got another 100 years and that's it? I mean, we're all going to find out, at some, or not necessarily, hopefully in our lifetime, if we continue to live and they figure out how to prolong life as they're doing so many different things with biohacking. But specifically in global warming, I mean, just look at just how hot it is. Even Arizona is normally hot, but it's hotter in the winter right now, right?
It was 85 degrees in the first week of December. It was the hottest day on record in the state in Arizona for the month of December.
Yeah,
85 degrees.
And I'm in the Bay Area. I mean, we've been having some warmer days.
Seattle had to use air conditioning this year.
Yeah, Seattle had to use air conditioning. We were up there. Literally, it was 100 degrees. And that city's infrastructure isn't set up for the heat like that. Nope. And then the fires going in California. We had another fire going on out there just last week when I was out there. I thought it was like fog. I walked outside. What's going on? Yeah. And my friend, told me like, yeah, it was a fire. I was like, wow, this is crazy. So it's here. We're having issues with our climate. Yeah. So we have to figure out a way to solve it. And the companies that do are going to, make a huge impact. That's all a business should be. Right. Should be solving a problem that helps and improves humanity as a whole, and they will get a nice reward for it. So companies that can figure that out, especially in some of these areas where they're underrepresented people, they typically sometimes have the worst, climates because of the pollution where the factories were built at over the years. So if we can find a way to, create solutions for that, I think it's going to be beneficial. So
is the metaverse good for society or is it bad?
I don't know yet. We're all going to see, man. I haven't become a big advocate for it because I'm still learning it. I think it's the ready game one. That's where we're going into that type of lifestyle. So it's going to be interesting to see, what the metaverse creates. I would hope and believe it's used for good. But just like anything else, it could be used for video games, and I mean it's in the history, every generation has some new technology that's come out, and the elders have always said this is going to destroy us. From the radio, when the radio was created, they were like, "Oh, television, internet,
personal
computers, the iPhone, the internet, social
media." In lots
media.
of ways, it has. Right? It has distorted what was the past.
Yeah, but it could be used for good. Yeah. Anything I think can be used for good also could be used for what someone perceives as evil or can create destruction. It's how we use social media. Like Instagram, we use Instagram. It's not social media, it's business media. Yep. That's what we've heard that term rolling with that. So I can use it for business, and my business is to make an impact in the world and help people bring purpose to their portfolio. So that's how I'm using social media. So that's a good impact in the world. But some people can use it for what they believe is beneficial to them, but it can causing, people to have, shame, guilt, and fear and anxiety, whatever they may be posting and sharing. So what this metaverse may be, I'm not sure, but people are already kind of living in this space through video games, through the Sims world, through playing certain video games. What's the one, the Minecraft, where you buy stuff online that's not even real, but you got to have status in the metaverse or whatever platform to be cool. So it's going to be
social status. We're always going to rank people.
Yeah, it's always. I mean, people.
Society.
Yeah, I mean, fabrics, silks, and gold.
We rank things.
Yeah, exactly. We feel like we're superior based off of the fabrics that we're wearing, and now it's going to be the images that we possessed on this new world,
this digital world.
Yeah, so it's going to be interesting to see. I believe it can be used for good, but once again, the jury's still out. A lot of money to be made in that space, though.
Yeah, no, there's definitely a lot of upside. All right, I'm gonna ask you another question because things are popping in my head as you're talking, and I have an opinion here, so I'm asking a question for you, but I can't wait to drop my thoughts on this. My opinion.
Well, you've been preparing for it, so
yeah,
it's probably gonna be better than mine on this one.
No. Athletes getting paid, high school athletes, college athletes getting paid. You saw the drop of Overtime Elite? Is that the name of it? Is that Drake? Is that owned by Drake? Anybody know?
I think it's Drake, and I don't know if it's Drake Overtime because Overtime is
Overtime. Yeah, I think Drake. I'm not sure. Body. Anyway,
I'm not sure.
What's your opinion on what they're doing in the youth sports and high school sports, college sports? What's your opinion?
I think it's long overdue that there's some type of compensation for an athlete who's putting his work out to the world, and others have been able to, capitalize off it for, thousands of years, right? When we go back to, I'm a big advocate of Dr. Claude Anderson's work. He wrote a book called Black Labor, White Wealth. Mm-hmm. And then there's another term expanding that of Black labor, Black talent, Black influence, white wealth has been created off of that. So a lot of these youths that have been playing, whether in college or in high school in these different leagues, they aren't getting compensated unless they're getting their food paid for, their school paid for. That's a form of compensation, people say. But all these, arms and these hooks are in these students around them, and this wraparound type of deal, and are making billions of dollars off of them. So I think it's just that they receive some type of compensation. How much that may be, that's not for me to choose. And then the management of it, where when money can make things messy over time, if it's not managed correctly, just like, you give a 18 to 23-year-old kid first round draft pick millions of dollars and no right management around him, he's going to be like traditionally in the past, how a lot of athletes have been going broke. But I think with this acceleration of financial literacy getting out with the podcasts is like Earn Your Leisure, and all these guys out here really giving out
underestimated.
We're doing that too. We gave them a shout out on that. But just there's more information out there in the marketplace, and more people are starting to become more financial literate, where I think it can accelerate these kids learning how to potentially manage their money and have the right people around them. Because where it can get real messy, the money gets out to these kids and they end up broke. Just like the athletes of the past. But I think athletes of now and the future, especially in the professional world, have become better managers of their money. Traditionally over the years, we've all heard of the athlete that has made millions of dollars, and then literally when they're done with their career, they have nothing. So definitely just want to make sure that's happening for the athletes. But yeah, I think there's a lot of different opinions on that. Would love to hear yours. I think I know what you're going to share on that, but.
Yeah, so it is, I wanted to confirm it is Bezos, Drake, and other NBA stars are invested in their $80 million fundraise. Wow. They just raised a Series C. It says Bezos and music star Drake and 25 NBA players. So NBA players clearly have an opinion on who should be getting paid. And I think if you've ever been an athlete at a level where, whether it's high school or college, where it's clear people are getting compensated based on partially what you contribute to, that without you or your teammates, there wouldn't be a financial ecosystem, which is what a lot of high school programs, a lot of college programs, there's no financial ecosystem without basketball and football. Basketball and football are predominantly Black players. Let's just call it what it is. That is the number one outlet for young Black males is basketball and football. That's what we pursue first. And so I see it that I don't see a difference other than it's competitive, but I really don't see the difference between a 14 or 15-year-old who's playing on varsity as a freshman and packing the stadium out and has 300,000 Instagram followers, has people all over administration, has jobs that are being created because of security guards, because of parking attendants. Like, he's creating an economy, a small economy, at a small scale. I don't see how that's less valuable than a child actor. I don't see how that's less valuable at all. I don't see how that's. I see it as, and he has a very unique skill that he's trained very hard at, and he's bringing economic value to a city, to a state, to an institution. He's bringing economic value. If I bring economic value to any institution, there better be an exchange more than this funky degree, especially at the high school level where those degrees are worth almost nothing anymore. And then when we get to the college level, when you think about football and basketball, the way these institutions are paid because of what they're able to provide to fans, the name, image, and likeness thing was way overdue. But I'm not going to ignore the point that you had around handing people money that they've earned that are not ready for it. That's their money to lose. That's their money to lose. That is their money to lose. If you hand, and I think what I've seen from Overtime Elite, and I don't want to overspeak, but what I saw in a couple interviews is that they're doing a level of financial literacy, just like they're what we should be training kids for in our education system. We should be training kids how to handle $100,000. Yeah. Because most of them get out and they go handle $100,000 without knowing because they go get in student loan debt. Yeah. We go ask them to go spend $100,000, but we don't hand them $100,000. Right? But then we add 5, 8, 12% interest on it. So I just think it's way overdue. And anyone who is against it think it's going to be ruin the game. Like, you just don't know the game. Yeah. Like, to be totally honest.
They haven't played the game.
They haven't played the game. You ain't played the game. Like, yes, the game does change. When we went from college to professional, the game does change. The tempo changes when money's involved. There's betting and things some weird things that do start to involve. And from a fan's perspective, people like to watch college more than pro because it's less business. But that's not fair. Like, yeah, to you, the fan, but it's not fair to the player. Yeah. They have to play for free so that you can enjoy it more.
Yeah, and there's business happening all around it. From you watch on that TV, there's a TV contract happening on there.
100%.
Someone who owns that network, the investors involved in that network, the school's endowment that they're able to raise, that they invest in some of these funds that we're going to potentially tap into and start to have access to being on the cap table next to these big colleges.
Shame on people who think those kids shouldn't get paid.
Exactly. No one, 80,000 people do not show up to watch a kid take a calculus test. Straight up, that's a bar. Make sure that wasn't there somewhere. Man. They show up to watch these champions and these amazing, just phenoms, and entertain them. Yep. And they should be compensated. It's no different than, watching the King Richard movie with Venus and Serena Williams. They were 14
Great
years
movie.
old.
Shout out to Will Smith.
14 years old, signed the $2 million contract. The one girl before them, and then they ended up selling it. Venus, when she was 16, signed a $15 million contract with Reebok. Yep. Okay, what's wrong with that? It's a different sport because it's amateur that turns into professional at a younger age. Same thing with the Olympics. When you look at they're considered amateurs, but the gymnasts, they really peak out at the age of 12 or 13. So they have this window. So I think it's just, once again, evolution is going to happen, and this is something that needs to happen. I love how you broke down. They're creating an economy around them. Like you said, you go to these stadiums and they're packed out, sold out. All the food that's purchased in there, the security guards, the parking spaces, the restaurants around the places, the TVs, the jerseys, the uniforms, and the kid potentially, if they get hurt, that's it.
That's it. People stop showing up.
And
so there's that side of it. Then there's the other side. The guys who think they're that guy. Like,
you'll learn real quick.
You ought to see you play.
You're going to learn real quick,
It's a business. Like, you be like I don't want to say kids because these are young business people, and I believe that. But be careful, right? Because you get your feelings hurt in this business. Because when it becomes a business, you get your feelings hurt. It makes you feel like a number. Because at the end of the day, that's what you put yourself as. If you want to be paid, there's a price tag on your head, just like an employee. And if you it's cold out there, and so if you ain't got that sauce, you think the starting quarterback, he's getting all the endorsements deal, and you're the backup left guard, but you think you nice, you're probably not gonna get the same deal.
Yeah, I think it's gonna, once again, that transfer. I was gonna say an app. I'm not gonna give a shout out to a certain app yet. The transfer portal, people are gonna want to go play. versus sitting the bench because they're going to want to go make money, So I think that's a good thing is it may allow for other teams to become better because people won't sit the bench at a SEC school because they're usually powerhouses. People are probably going to want to go play right now. And I believe, as colleges start figuring these things out, the colleges with the biggest spin are going to recruit sometimes the biggest athletes. If you ain't got your ice, if your ice ain't shining like somebody else,
hey man,
feelings get hurt. But that's part of the game.
It is. Well, I'm gonna I'll share on this last one, and then we'll let you you wrap it up. So I won't ask you the question first. I'll answer it. Favorite Black entrepreneur. So my favorite black entrepreneur. I'll go first so that you can think through it. I would say one of my favorites. I have a few. But one of my favorites has always been Master P. He has lived like 9 dreams or at least 3 or 4 dreams of a young black kid. He's been a rapper. He's an executive. He played in the NBA. He's a movie star.
Director,
producer, great father, got, great kids. And he owns multiple companies, but, his story starting, I think the reason why I've been so drawn to his story, one, I got to watch it. No Limit Soldiers were hot when I was a kid, and I remember watching him bring all his people on. And then if you watch his special, how he recruited people and how he really tried to put them in position. And even what he's doing today, like when he doesn't have to, he's always trying to put people in position. He has built a career around making himself a lot of money, but also bringing others with him, regardless of their skills. And, he's always bringing people with him. And he's been a huge advocate for his community. And not to say, quote unquote, he's done it the right way, because I don't know him personally, but he's just always been someone that's always really inspired me. And his seed money came the right way, which was his grandfather's life insurance policy. That was, I think it was $10,000. And then he took it, flipped it, and look at what he's built out of it. I think that there's so many great stories underlined in that, but his grandfather's wisdom to at least leave something. And like all of us as parents, as business people, as black men, like leave something behind and then let the next generation lily pad from that. So favorite black entrepreneur is and always has been Master P. Percy Miller.
Yeah. P,
man.
Nah, definitely. Make him say, nah, man. Yes, Master P, amazing. And I like how you just wanted to add into that. You said, to leave something behind. It's a principle of life, and an inheritance is what you leave to them, but a legacy is what you leave inside of them. So you left both. He left the grit, the tenacity, and that's where the term "no limit." His grandfather was in the military, so there's the tanks. That's where he got the tanks. He said, "Hey, there's no limit to what you can create," and then even got it out the trunk with the hustle, selling the CDs out, watching the Mary Kay, Avon and Mary Kay ladies coming out working out the trunk. So that grit and that tenacity. So many dynamic black entrepreneurs out there that we haven't just been highlighted in our history. I think we always kind of talk about a lot of the pain in our community, but there's still a lot of, prize that comes out of that pain. Like I said, diversity becomes a lot of people's asset. Right now, the one that comes to my mind, just because of the space that we're in now too, with being one of the top private equity firms in the world, Vista Equity Partners with Robert Frederick Smith, his story coming from, the inner city of Denver, Colorado, and he was able to go see Dr. King speak, him and his mom, the I Have a Dream speech, and his mom really instilled in it that he can create anything he wanted. And then that's when the segregation started to go away and the schools started to integrate. And he was on one of the buses that was allowed to be bused into a school that provided better education. But in that same time frame, some of the buses got set on fire because there was a group of people that did not want to see this integration happen. They didn't want to see this other group that has been denied access to the resources of this country to create. So they went and literally blew up buses.
Yeah, he was on the 13th bus and they blew. Yeah, isn't that what it was? Yeah,
number 13 bus, Lucky 13, which was my football number in college and in my junior college. And he was on that bus and he was able to get that access to get the information for him to go create the life that he lives now, worked at Goldman Sachs for a few years, and then he went off and took a risk, once again, and did it himself, and literally is, at one point was the richest black man in America, and has really built the largest and most successful private equity company to date over the years. And it's just beautiful to hear his story, his testimony. He remembers his story. He remembers where he came from, and he still is giving back out there. And sooner or later, we're going to be partnering with him on something. I'm just speaking that into existence.
Shout out to Robert Frederick Smith, RFS. No, Robert, just to piggyback, when we started to learn who he was, because he was a black billionaire that didn't do it through arts and entertainment, sports, arts, and entertainment. That's not where he made his wealth. He made his wealth
business.
In business. He's truly an entrepreneur, not leveraging his name, image, and likeness to then use that as capital. Nothing wrong with that. Yeah. But he really did it, from an employee standpoint, being a very successful employee and then going and launch his own entrepreneurial journeys. And man, that would be a dream come true if we got a chance to even just meet him. But to have him on the show or to, do some work with him, that would be
speaking that into existence. Robert Frederick Smith will be on the Underestimated.
Y'all tag him so
because I'm pretty sure, and he'll share in the story. I've heard him speak. He has been underestimated, for one, being a black man in the private equity space. When he would show up to meetings and they would think that he was an employee or the partner.
When's your boss going to get here?
Not knowing he was the CEO of the company just because of how he looked, but still being able to show up with that grit and tenacity to build what he's got in the face of all adversity is beautiful. So he's definitely underestimated, but now he's definitely overbooked.
Absolutely. Jeremiah, man, it's a pleasure. This is long overdue. I'm glad that we're able to do this together, man, on this journey of life, business, podcasts, and everything. So thank you guys all for watching. This is the Underestimated podcast. Thank you to our sponsors who make all of this possible. We greatly appreciate all of our listeners, all of our fans, all of our friends, and of course our sponsors. So thank you guys, and make sure you tune into the next episode.